Hello there, my name is Misha. I'm a DevOps engineer and a master of note-taking, and today I'm going to show you the Para method by Tiago Forte. So when I first dived into note-taking systems, I was like so overwhelmed and confused. I tried bullet journaling, the Cornell method. Later I encountered the Para method, and then I moved on to the Zettelkasten method. And I tried all of these methods and several more. I won't list them all. I've tried them all, and I have thousands of hours of note-taking and research under my belt using these systems. So I feel like I'm in a position where I can make some genuine recommendations that come from experience and not some YouTube kid who reads an article, right? So I want you to start a note-taking system that suits you, that fits you. So I'm going to give you also a few sets of principles and pitfalls with this method. And I'm going to also explain why I think this method is good for beginners. So this video is going to save you a lot of time if you watch it till the end. So after all of these thousands of hours of note-taking and trying out, I recommend two methods, the Para method and the Zettelkasten method. Here we are going to focus on the basics of the Para method, why it's suitable for beginners, and how to use it effectively. And then next week we're going to look into the Zettelkasten method. So the Para method is created by Tiago Forte, and it was done in his book, Building a Second Brain. So this is a brain, and it's called Building Your Second Brain. And that's a really good book. I really recommend it. I'll leave a link down below. And what's interesting is that it's not just about nodes. This Building a Second Brain is more like a larger productivity system. And thus, the Para method is not only a method for note-taking. It's not just for writing. What's cool about the Para method is that it serves as an overall structure for your entire life and for your thinking. So it's not only about notes, it's also actually how you think about your time, how you divide up your time, how you prioritize your tasks. It's a really interesting method. And this is also why I recommend it for beginners, is one of the reasons, because it's one of the first attempts, if you're coming to this world, to the productivity world, completely unstructured. This is going to be one of the attempts to actually start categorizing things and doing things in a more intentional way. So the Para acronym stands for projects, areas, resources, and the archive. That's what the PARA acronym stands for. And I'm going to dive into each of these elements one by one. So let's start with the project. So if you've heard of Getting Things Done, GTD, by David Allen, you might have come across this definition of a project. But in there, a project is defined as anything that requires the completion of multiple tasks in order to achieve a certain outcome. So whenever you have more than one task that you need to complete that is all contributing towards a single goal, a single desired outcome, that is a project. And usually projects have a short time horizon, and it's usually about maximum 12 months. But in my own system, I usually see projects like 2-3 months, that kind of thing. So it's like I try to scope them very small. So it could be building a PC, it could be planning a holiday, planning a vacation, setting up a blog, that kind of thing, where it has a clear end state. That is a project. Now, in the Para method, a project is simply a folder that you can collect notes in. So this is like a folder, and will be your project. So it's very similar to the classic way of managing projects, right? If you were to buy a house, then if you are organized, then you would buy a folder like this paper folder that you have. That's where the word folder comes from. So this paper folder that holds other papers, like not even a binder, but just to fold it around. So in that folder, you would then collect like all of the contracts for the new house, and you go to several different mortgage providers, and they all give you documentation, they all give you flyers and all that stuff, and you collect all of that in this single folder. And every time you sit down to work on this project, you are performing work on buying a house, you would sit down, you would take that folder, and then you have all of the information readily available for you. It's all spread out for you. So that is like the classic way of collecting information, and you're able to carry it around, and that is more of the paper age. And it is a very effective way of doing it. So a project, like we said, is a set of tasks to desire a certain outcome. And like a few examples would be to plan a vacation. So I really love hiking. So I'm going to draw a horrible drawing of a shoe. This represents vacation to me. And then in order to plan that vacation, there are several tasks. So I would have to research destinations, and I would have to book a flight, and you would have to create a packing list, all of that, research the correct gear. So these are all tasks that are all contributing to this one project of a holiday. Or another one would be to launch a blog, right? Say you want to launch a blog on the internet, and then you need to choose a platform. Like, are you going for Substack or WordPress, or maybe going for self-hosted with Hugo? You will need to figure out a design or a theme. You have to write your first post, all that kind of stuff. So these are all, and when you are like researching the platform, then you will collect all of this information, like the links that you find on the internet. All of the links are being stored in this folder. You will find, you will start writing notes. Like, you are actually writing notes on the research. Like, when you come across Substack, then you write a note to yourself, what you think of it, what you don't like about it. All of that lives in the project folder and is gathered there. So next we would have areas. Now, areas are different from projects because they entail something that you are responsible for over a longer period of time. It involves an ongoing engagement or responsibility. So by definition, it's going to play a significant role in your life. It's a very important thing in your life. So an example of areas with responsibilities would be the house, right? This is a house, and then you need to paint the house. You need to do gardening and landscaping. You have to mow the lawn. All of these responsibilities come with a house. Secondly, it could be your health. Then you would have to have an exercise routine, like fitness or running, and you need to have a good diet. Like health is a big area. Could be family, like maintaining family relationships, all of that. And all of these activities, like for your house, you will take notes on how your, I don't know, permaculture in your garden, right? Or when you should sow these types of seeds, what the best paint options are for your particular building material, all those kinds of things you can gather in these areas. So when it's time to look at your notes, then you know exactly where to go. You go to the area of the house, and then you figure out then you find the painting note, and from there are linked notes that have to do with painting. So areas are like I said, a project is different from an area because a project is about like 3 to 12 months, and it has a defined end goal. But an area doesn't have an end goal. It's just something that goes on, and that it's significant in your life, and that you are expecting to spend a lot of time on and take a lot of notes on by distinction. Now, notice that this project of buying a house that we discussed earlier can then transition into an area. Like you start with a project of buying a house. And then when that is completed, then the project transitions to an area. So you would move, you would have your projects folder, and here you would have the house project. And here is the areas folder where you have like family and other things. Well, what you would do is then you would take the house project and move it to the area because it's sort of graduated to area status. That's how this organization would work. And now you can start seeing how this philosophy, this para method can really help you to structure your thinking, because suddenly you have this distinction between short-term projects and long-term areas. And to me, that was super helpful. Like I was just going about it like randomly, and it was all jumbled. And this distinction of a long-term engagement versus a short-term set of tasks was very useful to me in the beginning. Resources. These are simply collections of information which you expect to be useful in the future. So these are all used for reference. So it's not necessarily tied to a project. It's just a hobby that you have. You can be into like indoor vegetable gardening, or you can be into a game, and then you collect all of the guides, build guides, and all of that stuff you can collect in this Diablo 2 folder, for example. So all of those notes you come across during your content consumption, or like links you come across, all of this stuff, you gather that in resources. So it's not useful at this very moment, but you expect it to be useful in the future time. So you can easily find them later. So some examples of resources in my para system is like Microsoft Azure, Go, Kubernetes, but also like weight loss and writing. That's a resource. I always collect things about writing. So indoor vegetable growing. These are just like interests that you have, hobbies that you are researching often, and then you come across things, you write notes about them, and then you store them all in these respective containers or folders. And then finally, there is the archive. So, and this is where you place notes which are not useful currently or in the near future, but you don't really want to throw them away either. And what's great about an archive is that in a system like Obsidian, then you will start searching for notes, like when you're searching for certain notes, and then suddenly you come across a note of like 3 years ago, and you had totally forgotten about that note, but all of a sudden that idea or that concept that you have spelled out in that note suddenly becomes super relevant, and you make a connection that is totally unexpected. So instead of deleting notes, it's much better to keep them in an archive so that they will come up with searching. And you can make these unexpected connections with notes. So I recommend not deleting notes unless you are certain that this is not useful for your system at all. Keep them in the archive. And also, like in tools like Obsidian, it is possible to exclude certain directories from your searches. So even if you if you are bent on not seeing your notes in the archive, then you can always exclude that from your search. So the implementation of this in terms of a note-taking system is very simple. You will have a directory structure. So the way I do that, let's see, you can see it here. Yeah, here is my Vim, and this is like an example vault that I created. So here I would have an inbox. I highly recommend inbox. I'll go into that later. But then I do projects, areas, resources, archive. And notice that I use numbering because the para is not in alphabetical order. So on Unix systems, this is a nice way of actually making sure that the area, the order is in the order that you want. You could also move the inbox to number 5 if that's what you like better. So you create this directory structure, and then you start placing your notes in there. So in Obsidian, how it works is that it's just a file system on your disk, and this is why I recommend Obsidian, like I've said in the previous video, because then you have your local markdown files on your system, and you can then place these in like a project folder, and you have other notes about your house. Well, these can all go into the house area, because each of these folders would have their subfolders, and that's how you would have like your house area, your family area, and your volunteer work area. This would be the project of starting a blog and building a PC. All of them have these subfolders. And then when you are done with the building a blog project, then you would move that to the archive, for example, or to an area. So you move these things around after you're done with them. So this is the implementation of Para in a note-taking system. But you can also, like if you have like a bookmark manager, for example, well, in there you can also start gathering the stuff in these categories. You can, if you have physical notes, if you have a bookcase, or if you have like physical notes that you use, that you write in, or your notebooks, you can make this Para distinction into everything you do. And that's what I like about the Para method, especially for beginners. Now, about the inbox that I showed you, inbox. This is a concept that I've been testing a lot over the years. Like I didn't really like that idea of an inbox in the beginning, and then I had an inbox, then I did it away with it, tried it for a few months, then it was back. And now now that I've mastered my system, now I have settled that inbox is the way to go. You need to have an inbox. So what you do with your inbox is that you will be capturing your notes while you're on the go. Then you have this low friction way of capturing notes. And this will stimulate you to do more notes, to write more notes, if it's a low friction way. If it's you're reading a book, you have your notebook, for example, or you have your phone with Obsidian on it, and you have an interesting idea, you create a note, it's in the inbox, and it's done. It's out of your mind. And this will start to get you into this note-taking habit. And that is a very useful method of working. But it does require discipline because ideally once a day, or at least several times a week, you will have to sit down at your desk calmly and sit down with your computer, and then you start processing these notes. Then you have to start, then you put them in all your different projects and in your area. And sometimes you will find notes in your inbox that at the time seemed interesting and useful, but then later you think, nah, I don't really need that, so you delete that note, right? So it's an extra layer of thought on your notes, which is very useful. I very often delete notes from my inbox because they don't seem useful at all anymore. But this idea of an inbox where you can capture notes quickly on the go and then you process them later is a very powerful thing, and I highly recommend you do this. So why do I recommend the para method for beginners? Well, if you're completely new to note-taking and productivity systems, then the para method is a great place to start because it's an excellent framework for both your writing, your note-taking, and your thinking, your brain here. So it's like I mentioned earlier in the video, it's not just about notes, it's actually a method of bringing some structure to your whole life. It's a frame of thinking, and that's what I like about the para method, and why I also recommend it to beginners if you're completely new to note-taking and productivity and living life with intention, basically, instead of just going from paycheck to paycheck and from recommended YouTube video to recommended YouTube video. Because the para method will force you to sit down and think, well, what projects am I actually working on? So when I started out, this was super helpful to divide this, to make this division between projects and areas. It really helped me to get a clear picture of my priorities. I had all these projects in my head, and I would just be doing stuff randomly in the moment that as I felt that suited best for the moment. And each of them had like this explosion of unfinished tasks that was all in my mind. But when I sat down and I started really thinking about, well, what is actually important? Like, what are my areas? What are the most important things in my life? And I came up with a lot of areas. And then I thought, well, maybe I need to cut a few of these out because I need to focus on the other ones. So in my particulars, I'll tell you a little bit of a story about myself. But when I started out and I wanted to make a career change to DevOps, music was a very important area in my life. I play guitar, I sing, I play the piano, but all this stuff takes several hours a day of practice, and it's fun. But at that moment, I really made a conscious choice. Like, okay, it's an important area in my life, but my career is an even more important area in my life at this moment. So I cut out music from my life, and I saved thousands of hours a year because I don't have to do that practice anymore. And I will pick it up later. But now at this point, this area needed to be put into the archive for a bit. Because remember, archive is not something permanent, right? You can archive something and you can take it out from the archive. So that was really useful. And then this distinction between projects and areas was also super useful. Like, what are the short-term things? Well, that's very bad writing, but okay. So what are the short-term things? Which projects am I actually working on? Like, I was like building a home lab and Arch Linux, and I was studying for certifications, and I did it all like jumble around in random order. But really think about, like, what is my project? What is the goal that I want to achieve? What is the desired outcome? And then what are the tasks that are needed to achieve this desired outcome. And really sit down and divide them up. And this is why Para is so powerful beyond just a note-taking system. Because if you're new to this is going to be super useful to actually get some structure in your thinking and your life. And then secondly, I think we are, as human beings, we are somehow naturally inclined to divide things up into folders and directories. We like, at least I think most people like to have categories for things and to split things up and to put things into their correct category, into their correct place. And the Para method is a great way to start. It feels natural to separate things, and like this, putting notes in certain categories is significant in the beginning, but as you become more advanced, as your note-taking becomes more advanced, you have done it for a year or so, and you become more mature in your note-taking, then it becomes less significant. It becomes less significant to do this stuff. And in the Zettelkasten method, which we will discuss next week, there is no such structure. Everything lives in just one big directory with all of your nodes in them. And then all of these nodes are linked among each other with a system of identifiers or markdown links in Obsidian. So there's no way of pulling out the vacation project in a folder like you might be used to. So that is why I recommend Para first, because this can be a very daunting prospect. At least for me, it was like completely unearthly to put everything in one folder and then somehow expect to be able to reach your notes. But we'll get into that in the next videos. It can be very daunting, and it's most important to get started quickly. The most important thing is to start taking notes. So when you start implementing the Para method, I will share some principles and pitfalls, like things to watch out for. But before I do that, I just wanted to show you that I have a course on the Obsidian 101, Udemy course referral links. So here's my link for the course. And if you go to this course on Udemy, this is a full note-taking system in 1 hour. It's like now it's like $14.99. Udemy controls these prices. It's super cheap. It's already getting 5-star reviews. 115 people have bought it, so it's not just one review, right? It's proper rating, and this goes over the Para method, especially in terms of note taking. But it shows you a complete inbox workflow, how to set everything up with correct key bindings. So this channel is called Living on the Command Line. So of course we are interested in doing everything with our keyboard. So everything is set up with the mindset of doing as much as possible with your keyboard. And this is actually a great way to get started with the Para method in Obsidian. It takes you 1 hour, and then you have a fully functional note-taking system, including backing it up to Git. So it's a very good thing. And you can also consider joining my school community, because then you get access to all of my courses, unlimited access. I have several courses on, you can watch my Zettelkasten method. You can watch my course on all of these other courses on Kubernetes, how to maximize your salary, config management. There's so much here. Goal setting in Obsidian. It's a very important course that many of my students have liked very much. And this is currently $30 a month. The price is going to increase fairly soon. So this is a great way to get in, because if you get in for a price, then you will always keep paying the price regardless if I raise it. And here you get access to the community, where we have 3 weekly Q&As. You can get direct access to me, where you can ask questions about note-taking. You can ask questions about your software engineering DevOps career. And there's already 20 pages of topics here that you can search all about Obsidian, Vim, note-taking, and it's just a massive hub of knowledge. So check it out. You're going to get the most value if you choose to go for the school membership. So now let's go for some principles and pitfalls when implementing the PARA method. First one is, let's see here, Zen mode. The first one is make decisions quickly. So when you're processing your inbox, don't sit there and thinking for 5 minutes, like, is this node should it be in my project, or is it more suited in this area, or should it rather be there? No, don't fall into that rabbit hole. If you're processing your nodes, it should take maybe 3 seconds to like, okay, this belongs to this project. Oh, this belongs to this area. And it doesn't matter if it's out of place, if it's the wrong location. Later, when you're working with your nodes, you can always move them back later. But it's just this is something that I did in the beginning. I was sort of agonizing over these decisions, and that is something to look out for. The second pitfall is avoid moving files around all the time. So it can be really tempting to sort of click through all of your folders and see what nodes are in there. And then you start thinking, well, maybe this one is much better placed in my home maintenance area instead of a gardening project node, right? It can be super tempting to do this kind of stuff. It feels like productivity, but actually it is false productivity. False productivity. This is something you have to look out for, like in general. Sometimes these activities feel like you're doing interesting work that is conducive to contributing your goals. And I've fallen into this trap. That's why I'm telling you this. But it can feel like a productive session, but it's not. It's not productive at all. So avoid moving files around. Just when you're processing them, put them in the correct project or area. Maybe consider moving like a project to an area later and archiving an area or a project. I suggest it should go from the inbox to a project or area and then to the archive. That should be the maximum of file movements. Like maybe one movement here, but if you do more than that, then you know that you are doing too much of this. Let's see. Next, related to this is that your note-taking should improve your productivity. It should make you more time efficient. It should make it possible to achieve more in a shorter time. So if you find yourself agonizing over these node locations, if you find yourself you're spending a lot of time on making these decisions, then reflect. Like maybe the PARA method is not the right system for you. Maybe you are not suited to dividing these up into categories and you are more suited to the Zettelkasten method or something completely different. Like if your note-taking system is slowing you down significantly, then reflect. And of course, it will take some time to get started, right? Like when you start using, you build this system with the principles I give you, and then it takes time to get into it. Of course, like give it a few months, give it like half a year to really get rolling. But if you constantly feel it's like actually making you slower, then maybe a different method is better for you. And your productivity system should always make you more productive. So this is what I had to share about the PARA method today. There are like I recommend this to beginners because it helps you with thinking overall, and it's a good way of approaching life. But also there is a lot of resources available around this on the internet. You can check out Tiago Forte's book, Building a Second Brain. But there are tons of articles, tons of YouTube videos. Like I've told you everything you need to know, but if you have the desire to verify what I told you is true, or if you want to have more information, then there's tons of material available out there. So that is also an advantage of the Para method, that it's well established and that material is easily available. But yeah, check out my course or my school community, or if you want to do it on your own way, start with these Para directories, start putting notes in them, and then have an inbox workflow, and start with that and see how it feels for you. Don't think too much about it, just do it. And then next week, we're going to look into the Zettelkasten method. So thank you very much for watching and hope to see you in the next one.